Okay, so topic for today, we're talking about, is C Sharp difficult to learn? And the reason we're talking about this is because we get asked it sometimes.
Yeah, and so a lot of people think that C sharp is difficult to learn versus Python. So like
Right,
or versus PHP. And so like you see that all the time. Oh well, PHP is easier to learn. Therefore, that's what I'm going to start with.
yeah,
And I think that's a straw man argument. It's not like which is easier. It's you really need to decide which one should I start with. Like it's
right,
not about like learning one over the other. And then, the other thing that is, should I learn, I'm going to get into web development. Do I really need to know JavaScript? And the answer is yeah. But,
right,
so these are other things and these kind of arguments. Is that easy to learn? It doesn't really matter if
right.
it's
Yeah,
easy
you
or
haven't got a
perceived to be
choice.
hard. You have to learn it in
Yeah,
order to do this stuff. So so when we talk about C sharp, we always get this kind of thing. It's difficult to learn. And I think it comes from it being an object-oriented programming language, and people think that is like very black magic. And
right,
there are some concepts inside of C sharp that are kind of intermediate to advanced.
right. There's some concepts and some
Um,
patterns you've got to learn,
yeah,
right, that aren't necessarily like, you can't necessarily relate them to something else that you've learned, right? That's
right.
the thing. It is very abstract. It is
Yeah.
very new, so you have to learn
Right.
something that is new. People see that as being difficult.
But yeah, but what I always tell people is, at the core level of just the language is C sharp, and the language to learn, it's the same as JavaScript. Like
Yeah. Yep.
you have, in fact, a for loop. If I put a for loop up and told you which one of this is C sharp and one's JavaScript,
Yeah.
you couldn't tell the difference. They look identical in a lot of cases. An if statement will look identical to a JavaScript if statement. And other languages will have different syntax for if or switch or different components, but like all of them involve loops, conditional logic, if then else.
Yep.
All of them will have, well, some of them just now got a switch statement, but like a switch is another kind of like conditional statement. They'll all have these basic level things. Before we even get into object-oriented programming, learning the language itself will be a lot like learning how to do something else in JavaScript, except the language targets different things. So when you're looking at languages, some are targeting, the JavaScript targets the DOM or the web page. C sharp is more back-end general purpose language, and it targets different things. So that in itself may seem more difficult, but it's not. I mean, it's the same. They're kind of equal in like what they do for the most part.
Right. So that's kind
Now
of
we
the
can
first thing to
argue
take
over
away.
like, ooh, you know what I can do in Java that you can't do in C sharp, and I get all that kind of stuff. But I think
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
for 5 to 10 year seniors in to argue about like, I saw a question in there, is Java faster than C sharp or something like that?
Right. Right.
Which I find it funny. You should
That
ask
shouldn't be
C
the
sharp faster than
exactly.
Java. I mean, like that's the way it should be
But
phrased.
also, that shouldn't be your like deciding factor up front.
It's
Like
not.
if you're a junior, that's not something that you need to take into account. That's
No.
something that the architect needs to take into account. That's been there for a minute,
Right.
and he's like deciding at the company which language to use. You're not going to come in as a junior and be like, yeah, well, I know C sharp, so we're going to build it in C sharp. That's not going to happen. You need to
Yeah.
get the job for the technology stack that you know how to do, right? So if you learn C sharp, that's the job you're going to get. You're not going to walk into a place and be like, well, I just came out of Bootcamp, I learned C sharp, so now we're going to make this app in C sharp. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So
And so
whether
I
it's
think,
faster or not doesn't matter.
yeah. So I think the thing that people make the mistake on is which language should I learn? What they really should ask is which thing am I trying to build? What am I trying to build?
Right.
And that's going to tell you what languages and stacks and things you need to learn.
Yep.
Just because Python or PHP is easier doesn't mean that's the one you should necessarily learn from the start.
Right.
Because it may not lead to employment necessarily. You may need to be, you're just saying, I want to build mobile. Okay, well, you need to learn something different if you're going to build mobile. If you're going to build desktop, you need to learn something different. If you're building websites, there's lots of choices. But at the same time, once we have lots of choices, we need to figure out what stack is in most demand and then learn that. Learn the thing that leads to employment, not the thing that's easy to learn, because you're going to have to relearn something else. And this is why, Kevin, when we talk to people, they say they're learning 7 or 9 languages at once.
Yes. And we joke about that being a thing,
Yeah,
but it's
true though.
We've
They're trying to
seen
learn
it, we've heard it.
all of these things, but they don't have a goal in mind. So set the
Yeah.
goal of, I want to be, and put in the blank of the thing that you want to build. I want to build websites. I want to build mobile. I want to build desktop. I want to do data science. Figure out what it is, the thing that you're trying to build, instead of just like, I want to learn how to code.
Right.
And that's the thing that plagues our industry. It's just like, it's so bad.
Does.
Like, it's so bad.
Does.
Like, let's learn how to code. And that's
I would
when
also
you see,
say, if that's somebody that says that too, like, I just want to know how to code, and you don't know which one of those things to choose, we're going to tell you, choose web dev.
yeah, choose web dev. If you don't know and you don't have an opinion, pick web development.
Because it is going to be the easier path, and it's going to give you a better pathway in because of job availability, because of the way that you're going to learn all these extra things. There's less stuff to do.
And this is why you've known me for a long time, and this is why inside of Coder Foundry, when people teach people how to code, they use console log, and that just drives me up a wall, because like, we're never, ever, ever, ever really and realistically going to build a console log application, and like, you'll see people building real estate apps and like all this stuff in the console log. And we've quit writing DOS applications a long time ago with UIs and all this kind of stuff. And it's because they're just teaching them how to code. And what we do here at Coder Foundry, and what you should be doing, whether you come to Coder Foundry or not, is learn how to code, but learn how to build something: web development, mobile or desktop, or data science. I think there's 4 of them I could see you can break into fairly easily as a junior.
Yep.
But breaking in as a junior, definitely web dev's easier than the other two, because there's just more jobs out there.
Yep.
If there's more jobs, you have more opportunities.
I think what we're saying with this is you need to go past the abstract sort of act of learning to code, because that's the easy part, right? The abstract learning to code part is easy. When you look at something like a Solo Learn or a Grasshopper or one of these things where they just teach the ideas and the concepts of like a language, right? That works. But then if you never ever apply that anywhere and you never put it into anything, it means nothing. The
don't know how to code, in my opinion.
Abstract art of coding is like, it doesn't really mean anything. Yeah, I know what this for loop is. That can help you do something else. But until you do the something else, it's kind of been a pointless exercise.
Yeah. And so like the coding, that when you learn to code, has to be the end goal, building something that does something. So typically console apps don't do anything. I mean, it's like, you need to build functionality. That's what we're trying to do. We're not building endless for loops and practicing. And that's why I have a problem with people that just study just algorithms. They just study algorithms, all they study, and data structures. And that's great. But can you build something that does something? And that is what people get paid to do. Very rarely they get paid to solve algorithms. They get paid to make something, make your code do something, fix a problem, build an application that solves something, those kind of things. Build Pokemon Go, the app that needs to be here when everything else goes down, so like, that's what it needs to do.
So to reframe this then, the question isn't, is C# difficult to learn? It's if C# is worth learning, and will it ultimately help you on your goal? That's what the real takeaway here is. That's what you're really asking.
Yeah, and I think you need to ask that same question yourself about PHP, Python, Java, all those things. Is it worth learning? And the answer is it worth knowing Python if I'm going to be doing data science? Right. Yes. Your goal 100%. Yes. Yep. That's the thing that you need to know. Is it worth knowing JavaScript if I'm going to enter into data science? Probably not. I mean, like, that's not where you would start. That's not the place you need to be going to. And you can say, yeah, but JavaScript's easy. JavaScript primarily is used to manipulate the DOM on web pages. So if you're learning JavaScript, you absolutely probably are needing to build web dev. Now, can JavaScript build other things? Yes. Again, you could build desktop application JavaScript. Is anyone going to hire you to do that? It's less likely than if you knew C#, or Java. So like, you need to know that there's languages that serve in different stacks. So is C# worth learning? Well, we've said before a million times that C# is a general purpose language that targets all of these things, which is kind of crazy. Yep. And that's why we think it's worth knowing. We can build desktop apps with C#. And it's the first class citizen. Why? Because Microsoft made C# and most desktop apps run on Windows. Now, with Maui, they're going to run them on multiple other things like Android, iOS, and macOS next year. But as it sits today, if you want to build desktop applications, you should know C#. Can you do it with C++? Yes. Can you do it with Java? Yes. Are there more jobs with C# on the desktop? Yes. So pick the one that gives you the most opportunity. And I'm not even saying which one I think's better. It's just which one will employ me faster is my whole onus on this thing.
Right.
So.
Yep.
So let me break in. Yes.
So this leads us to another tip then too. Around and we get this a lot. It's like, wow, like C#'s really deep and it's wide and there's a lot to it. And like to get a job, I need to know all of that, right?
Yeah.
Like I need to be able to I need to basically be a walking C# book.
Right.
And we're saying that's not the case.
So like, and I was teaching intro to JavaScript this week in the boot camp, and one of the things I was trying to iterate to the class was when you first see a language the first time, you're trying to memorize it, because learning typically up to this point, if you've been to college or you've been to grade school, was memorize a bunch of stuff, take the test, and regurgitate the answers back in multiple choice format, typically, A, B, C, D, and F. And in fact, I had my son who went to a community college before he went to Coder Foundry, was learning coding. He had a multiple choice C# test.
Right.
And it just like, I wanted to call the school and complain, like, we don't take tests like that. We learn how to code. The better answer is, can you build a program that does X? That's a great test,
Right.
But like, asking syntax questions in C# and multiple choice questions is dumb. So quit trying to memorize the language itself and ask yourself this question: what am I trying to build? What am I trying to do? What does this program do? And then think about that in terms of logical expression, or express that in the English language, so,
right.
And then what I do is I'll start writing comments in my program to saying, here's the steps of the thing that I'm trying to do before I ever translate that to C#.
You basically pseudo code your app, don't you? You say, I want to do this, down to kind of a granular level, really.
Yeah, down to a very granular level. It needs to do this, and that. And so we were walking through that exercise today, like, what's the first step in this app we're building? Well, we need to get the 2 inputs from the screen. Okay, write that down as a comment. Yep. How do we get, and then from there, this sounds crazy. First day in JavaScript, I asked them, now Google this. How do I get inputs from a screen? And so like,
right.
I'm not going to tell you. And then everyone's like, what? I'm like, no, listen, just so now you can start saying, okay, now I can start translating my English into JavaScript, and I correct them and we give them help and all that kind of stuff. But we want to show them like, that's how you do it, because I can't tell you how many times I Google how to do X in C# or how do I do X in JavaScript.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. I don't have everything memorized, and I'm not going to ever.
Nope.
But I'm pretty fast at like looking at like how to do that and this. And then things I use every day are in memory, document.getElementID. I know exactly.
And that's almost not by choice. That's just because through repetition. You didn't choose to remember that. You didn't go expressively say, I'm going to remember this thing. No. Just repetition means that you used it a lot so that you do remember it. And that's kind of the goal. There's 2 things. You remember through the repetition part. And then I think you said before, just knowing what you want to do in the English language and being able to Google that to come up with the answer. Right. That's the true superpower. That's the skill.
Right. And then as you advance, you'll Google less about the everyday stuff more and more. And then you'll just be Googling about the other kind of edge case stuff, or the stuff that's not in your current short-term memory. Or long-term memory. And
it's kind of funny. I had a similar situation earlier. I was working with something in After Effects, and I've used it a fair bunch in the past, but it's like, I haven't used it for a minute, and it's like I needed to do something. I needed to change like a rotation point, and I was like, I don't remember how to do that. I just Googled it.
Yeah, exactly.
Same thing. Like I figured, I knew what I wanted to do, and I just Googled it. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, I remember that now. It's that tool.
Yeah.
I figured it out.
Exactly.
It's exactly the same kind of thing. Exactly that. So yeah, so the takeaway from that is you're not trying to memorize everything, and don't be afraid to use Google. Every professional developer on this planet uses Google. If they tell you they don't, they're lying.
And like, we need to know what I want to build. Is like, what am I trying to do? What does this function do? What am I trying to do? Pseudocode it out. What am I trying to build is the primary question. If you can't express that in English or whatever your native language is, you're never going to express that in C# or JavaScript or PHP or Perl or whatever it is you're trying to learn, because you don't know where you're going. So you need to learn to think about these things in non-language syntax and say, what am I trying to do? What are the steps for me to achieve this? And then once you get that, you can then start programming, because it's just a different language.
So here's an interesting question from Ed17 Hero. So if you have a good answer for this one, what about inefficient approaches then? Using looping because you don't even know there is a thing called link. Not wrong, but not always the most efficient approach. I think that comes with experience, right?
It's experience and learning from others, and I don't know if link is the most efficient. It's just the easiest to do. Even saying that, it's like.
But I would say if you build an app for the first time, you're never going to build it the most streamlined, efficient way possible. If you can, then you're some kind of genius level person. Right. It just doesn't happen. You're going to build it and you're going to refactor it.
Like, we can talk about, we're going to go along a little bit later in C17, like how do I learn this then? What's my mechanism for doing this? And so typically, if you're building a C# application today on ASP.NET, you're not going to get out of any tutorial without understanding what link is, because it's a necessary thing of how it's done in a modern ASP.NET application right now. And then I would say the same holds true for other languages that utilize link, that they're going to do it. So, but at the end of the day, man, if you think about it, link is looping over a data set and it's filtering it using other filtering functions in the arrays and that kind of stuff and the structures behind it. So I wouldn't say that link is more efficient. It's just easier to do and less verbose than trying to write your own parsing and querying syntax, so. But I think that you're never going to know the absolute best case scenario for everything when you start out. So therefore, that means that shouldn't stop you from learning.
Do it the worst way, but learn how to do that, and then figure out how to refactor it.
Refactor it, get it to work, make it better. There's a lot of things that you can learn from this. I think from just doing it badly sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't perform very well. We're never going to know the most efficient way to do it, because sometimes it's not even worth making it the most efficient way. Sometimes
I was just going to say that I'm also sure that there's probably some very, very popular websites out there, or web apps out there that definitely aren't the most efficient, right? They're probably they could even be poorly written. I'm guarantee there's sections that will be considered if somebody looks at it that are very poorly written. But I guarantee they're in production and you probably use them every day.
Yeah, exactly.
So don't
let that stop you. I think imposter syndrome can set in right there, and I'm doing it wrong, therefore I've got to search out how to do this efficiently, and then instead of just getting the thing built out, so.
Right. Okay, here's something else we haven't touched on yet then, around C# being difficult to learn. The tooling. Tooling makes it way easier.
Yeah, it does make it easy. I think tooling matters. And so when you look at Visual Studio from Microsoft, I think they have the best IDE on the planet. It helps you with syntax and something called IntelliSense to help you know what functions or methods or properties are available, those kind of things. So it helps you out a lot. I mean, inside of MVC, there's a complete template that's generated that helps you kind of get through the minutia of where's the model live, where's the controller live, where's the view live, and gives you an architectural pattern right out the gate so that you don't have to think about that part of it, or reinvent the wheel there. And I think that's another thing that C# has an advantage over a lot of other languages, is that the tooling is like an all-encompassing umbrella that helps you build these applications easier, with it doing the boilerplate stuff for you, the setup, those kind of things, instead of you trying to build everything from scratch, like routing or security or all the other things we have to be concerned with. That's all inclusive in the box in the ASP.NET part. So for web development, I think they have a very big advantage over that. Same thing holds true for Windows development or desktop development.
Right.
you know, all the tooling and everything set out. How do I lay my screen out to, what's the pattern I need to follow to build a pretty good Windows application, you know? So how does that work? How does that pattern get displayed? How do I navigate? That kind of stuff's been thought out. So it makes it easier.
So with that said, what's your technique then for kind of learning this?
So like,
how do you do it? What's your, I think you promised.
So I think if I had to learn something today, so let's say that I'm going to take a journey and I'm going to become the best React developer on the planet. That's my goal.
Okay.
I'm probably going to watch a tutorial on React from some people on either YouTube or buy their course. Yep. That's what I'm going to do right now. And I'm going to watch that, build an app with whatever they're building, follow through, you know, so like I could take a very popular person and build an app they tell me to build. Yep. And then I'm going to build that again from scratch without the tutorial.
Okay.
And try to see, I'm looking at my code base that I built maybe as a reference or a guide. And then I'm going to go and like, see if I can recreate that. And then once I can do that pretty well, I can start building, you know, my whatever app, my to-do list app in React or whatever I'm building from the sample. I might take another tutorial and build another app and then see if I can go through the same thing. Maybe that other tutorial introduces me to databases or something else like that. And then finally, I'm going to build my own app. So now once I learn enough to where I can say, okay, I built enough apps, the app that I want to build, know what I want to build, is sort of like this one. Or I'm going to add a feature to this tutorial. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to take this tutorial and I'm going to add onto it. So for example, let's say that my tutorial in React taught me how to build an address book or a contact list. Yep. Okay. One of the features I could do is say, okay, what I want to do is categorize all my contacts, maybe wedding, maybe family, maybe work. And then I want to like email people based on those categories. And so that was where I could add a feature to a contact list versus just following their contact list verbatim, you know. And I think that's a lot of courses do that, where they'll suggest features or things you can do next to improve it, to make it better, to extend it. And I think that's the best way to learn how to do stuff, is by building things. And then after you've done that, let's say you've extended the tutorial and you've made it your own, you've changed the look, you've done that. Now what I want to do is build a completely brand new app that has similar functionality to an address book, but now it's not an address book, it's a real estate site, or it's a car site, or it's something else, where I'm changing the what it's doing, but kind of functionally it's the same. I'm just changing up.
You can see the similarities in the two. You're just mapping it over to some kind of new model,
some other domain of problem domain or something like that. So I think that's the best way to do that. So like at Coder Foundry, you can go through our self-paced course at learn.coderfoundry.com. You could build all the apps that we're going to do, but then you need to either rebuild those from scratch or you need to extend them, you know. Now, as course creators, sometimes when we offer extensions, people want the answers too. And so like we're trying to struggle through that with like what kind of learners there are out there. And so like, you know, and we've proposed problems before where people want us also to give them the answer to that one. So we're actually struggling with that too. But what I would say is, even if I give you like a JavaScript problem and you're down to number 6, and you've built 5 of those before, and then you're like, okay, I'm gonna see if I can build this one before I look at the video. I think that's another thing you could use, how you could use courseware to help you. You have the answer, but don't use the answer. Just try to build it first, then watch the video and see kind of how you made out.
Right. Okay, so that's kind of win-win too, though, when you think about it, because that's solidified your learning, so your learning is great, but now you've also got something that is unique to you that you can now use. Yeah,
and so what we say is then you put this work product on your portfolio. Oh, we got a super chat. All right, Austin Johnson.
Cool. Austin, thank you.
He's enjoying the thing. Tacos on me. Thank you, man. All right.
I like it. Thank you, Austin.
Appreciate it. So finally, what you do is you take these things and you put them onto your portfolio. Now, what we do is at Coder Foundry is we say, we're going to show you this application that you're going to build, and I'm going to build it one way, but we encourage you to A, rename it, B, change up like kind of like what it does. So for example, we have a student in the class, we had Superdog events, which tracked the number of events for Comic Cons. and tracked attendance and based on city and those kind of things. And it's very basic, which I had a student change that over to tracking his blood pressure. Same kind of concept, but, you know, he has hypertension, you know, and so like now he puts in his blood pressure readings in that, and that's his data set change. But the code itself doesn't really change because we're using the same pattern to do stuff. We're just tracking the data differently. And then once you start thinking in terms of patterns, in terms of like logically, I'm going to grab some data from a database. I'm going to stick that database into a model. I'm going to pass that model to the view. And you start thinking like, I don't really care what the model is or what the database is anymore. Now you've abstracted that away. And now you can write code and you can build anything. When you start thinking of less in terms of like specifics and less in terms of like abstractly, how do these systems work? How do websites work? How does React work? How does ASP.NET work? And then you can build anything at that point, because you basically do the same pattern over and over again. But you won't be able to do that until you build an app, you know, 5, 6, 10 times, you know, like where you've done it over and over again. You start seeing like, oh, this is just like the other one. It's exactly the same thing, except I'm using cars now. Before I was using houses. Now I'm using cars. That's the same app. Same thing. Like it's the exact same application. And so once that goes off, you can build anything at that point. And I think that just comes through practice and repetition.
There you go. Definitely. So here you go. Clara says, do more, talk less. That's it. That's our motto in the undergrad music ed program. You're not really learning until you put it into practical application. That's it.
Absolutely. And I think that learning to play guitar is you got to play guitar.
Right.
You know,
exactly. You can't learn it from a YouTube video if you don't have a guitar to play with.
And go back NC-17. It's like, well, is that the best way to learn it? I don't know. That's the way I'm doing it, man. Because I got to get down here and play this. You know, so like, it doesn't matter at that point. Can you produce the result at the end of it? So I think practical application is the way to go. And I think learning to code is the only way to learn to code is actually write code. I don't think there's an academic, and our college system, universities try to make it an academic pursuit instead of like a practical vocation.
Definitely.
And I think that's where the disconnect goes. And that's why we have things like just study algorithm. That's all you need to do. I'm like, well, can you center something in a div? I mean, like, you know, like I just like, no, I don't know how to do that. Like, well, okay, you know, but you can like make a link list and you can do all this other stuff. When would you ever use that? Like, what's the purpose? Why do those exist is more important. And then what's the practical application of them, you know, versus, you know, I can navigate an array 6 ways to Sunday. Well, so can everyone else. You know, that's not really that important in my opinion. You need to know, like, when would you use an array and what would you use it for? You know, those kind of things.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
So here we go. Ben has a good question. So how do we encourage people learning to play the long game? I think we all want to build the best thing in the least amount of time with the most users that make the most money. Patience is hard.
I think people learn that right away, that people that do a disservice on YouTube and in this content, this coding, learning to code market that we're in, is most people try to teach it in 3 weeks or something like that. And I go, I'm running
10 minutes sometimes. I literally saw a video this morning that said learn C# in 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's impossible. It's just not, it's just dumb. I mean, like, you know, like, and so here we're running a bootcamp for 12 weeks, but our 3 months is also 700 hours. And we think that's enough time to at least break in as a junior. Now, a lot of times when I talk to people on the internet, they're like, yeah, but they don't know this, and this, and this, and you need to teach this, and you need to test.
Because that was never the goal.
It's not the goal, dude. Like, can we produce a web page? You know, yes, test-driven development is important, okay? But, you know, if you had to think about it, if you had to learn 2 things, Git or test-driven development, which would you learn? We need to learn Git, because like that's more basic than that one. And not everyone uses tests in every app, even though people on Twitter tell you that everyone does it. They kind of do, but like a lot of people don't either. And so, like, you know, it'd be more better if I could actually write a web page that performed a function, you know, before I could get to the testing part. I can't get to that part yet. So I think a lot of people play the short game, which is fine, but they're going to realize it's going to take a minute. There is no shortcut to this anyway. So whether you like it or not, it's going to take a minute to learn how to code. And so patience is hard, but it's going to take you longer than 10 minutes. That's for sure.
Yeah.
That's good for YouTube. That's
Yeah.
good for clicks.
Right.
But like,
exactly. And that's exactly what that's feeding. Because what happens is on
I guarantee
YouTube,
it's console log too. I mean, like I guarantee
it has. I don't know what it is. I didn't even waste my 10 minutes. But it's the same thing. Because it's like I've talked about like how YouTube works before, and it's like if you want to like, let's say that you want to fix your plumbing in your house and you have a leaking shower or something, and you go like, how do I fix my leaking shower? And there's 2 videos, and one's an hour and one's 10 minutes. You're gonna watch the 10-minute video. So people are kind of like trained to think that way about how to look up stuff on YouTube. So when you want to do something, people are trained to look up the shortest amount of time to do the thing that they want to do. But it can't deliver on that promise. It just doesn't work.
No. Yeah.
So
it doesn't.
Just be wary of those kind of things too. I would say that like what we teach is a lot of stuff, not everything in a reasonable amount of time. It's you know what I mean? It's like it's the most you can learn in that amount of time. You could go to a boot camp for 6 months, but for most people it's not going to work. Like you can't take off for 6 months and do something full time for 6 months. It just doesn't work. You need to, your time to market does matter.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, cool. What other questions we got?
Let's do some questions then.
Some questions. Hit super chat if you want to know.
You already answered this one, kind of.
My answer is twofold. Number one, yes. Number two, does it matter? No.
Right.
I don't think, like in terms of like a lot of applications, it doesn't matter. But yeah, I would say that in general, .NET 5 and specifically .NET 6 is blazingly fast. And I'm sure there's some circumstance where someone's going to show me a Java thing and it's like, it's faster. I'm like, but at the most part, when we're talking about like cycles and how many transactions we can run in a second, that's under the optimal conditions for an optimal test. And you're training your code to pass this test. But in general, it's more important about like my database. How fast is the database hardware I have? What's the connection between the web server and the database? Is that pipe fast? There's always a bottleneck that usually has nothing to do with how fast that loop is running in C#. So like there's other things to consider when, especially in the web world, like it's never the language speed that's the problem. And so like, but I will say this, we have seen reports under .NET 5 that someone took a web API project in Framework 4.5, they converted it to .NET 5, and instantly it ran 5 to 10 times faster, reduced the memory on the web server load by half. So there are some cases where, okay, as things go up, it's better.
Yep.
But I'm sure that that's not always the case of why you should pick something. I think both of them are fast, given that you architect it right and you're doing stuff, so they're both fast. And then a lot of times it's not the language, it's other variables. That's maybe really what's happening between .NET 4.5 and .NET 5 is that the web API layer is rewritten. That is faster. It's not the language. It's the mechanism of web API that's faster. And they've reduced certain things that it does automatically for you out of the box. That makes
I think, like I said before too, this is something that you're not going to ever really decide either. Like you need to decide. You don't need to decide. You shouldn't pick your learning path based on one being faster in a benchmark than another.
Go to the benchmark report.
That is the stupidest thing ever, because that benchmark report, I guarantee you there's some cut down, ridiculous, unused framework on there that you've never even heard of, but it's blazingly fast. So
exactly. So would you
learn it?
No,
speeds, it's useless.
I think ASP.NET is like 3 on the list.
Something like that.
And I would say the 2 at the top of the list, no one's ever heard of. Like
I've never heard of. I definitely hadn't heard of it. No, I definitely
didn't know what that thing was. I mean, so like maybe, does anyone use it? No. So I don't
why
need
would
to
you
learn
learn it?
It's
pointless. It's one of those metrics that's like it would be a silly decision point. You need to pick it based on where the jobs are in your market. That's your choice. Because you're not making the decision about, like I said, when you get to a company, you're not being like, oh man, okay, I know C#, so I'm going to make this happen. Like, no, that's not how it works. You've already been hired in as a C# dev, so that's what they're using. And as far as you say about like the hardware or whatever it is, or something else that's not the language that's affecting the speed, again, chances are you're probably not making those decisions either.
Yep.
So
not.
don't really have to worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's see here. What's our next question?
Yeah, so I'm looking at the benchmarks now, and just to tell you the fastest framework score.
Yeah, what was it?
Lithium. I thought that was a battery. I don't know what it is.
Could be
Number
a,
2 was Just. Number
I'm not
3
sure.
was Dragon, and down the list, number 8, the first one that I've ever heard of is ASP.NET Core.
There you go.
Number 8.
There you go. So, you know, if you want to run off
Wizard,
and learn
Wizard do HTTP. Yeah, that one's mainstream.
But it's fast.
It's fast.
So
well, what does it actually do? It probably doesn't do as much, you know.
Lithium
So like you can look
apparently is
at
a
this.
PHP framework.
And that's fine.
Maybe
I'm wrong, man. Maybe I'm.
It has a web page. No, I've
What's
never
this
heard
called?
of it. This is this is Lithium, I think.
You asked for a better framework. Like, here it is.
Try and find a job in this. And I mean,
it's probably, you know.
Let's try.
We're going on a limb here.
What is that? Li3. I think it's called Li3.
Yeah.
Let's call it developer. I guess that should come with anything. Let's see what that comes up with.
Okay, we'll be right with you, Brittany. Thank you. I'm glad you completed the log. That's awesome. So
that is awesome. Yeah. Thanks for the super chat. Doesn't come up with anything. Li3 developer doesn't come up with anything.
But like definitely of the modern frameworks, the most used frameworks, ASP.NET Core is the fastest framework on the planet today. There's only 7 other frameworks that are faster, and we haven't heard of most of them. And I'm sure someone's heard of these. You know,
Wizard, I'm sure there's someone using them. Like
Wizard HTTP, Wizardo HTTP. That's awesome. Right
Wizard
there.
Wizard O.
Wizard O dash HTTP.
Okay. I mean, it doesn't even come up. I mean, I can't even find it.
I'd never heard of it. But with a name like Wizard, it's just like, you know, that's
it's you know, I really can't. Yeah, you know,
the Harry Potter framework, you know.
That's funny.
It's like Knockout was a Chuck Norris joke, you know. People used it.
So what does Brittany say here? I completed the blog. I love the outcome. Maybe we can take a look sometime. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, cool. Definitely.
We'd love to look at it. Yeah,
definitely.
Awesome.
I put out a thing on YouTube earlier, actually. I didn't even tell you this yet, Bobby, but I put a thing on YouTube. Yep. We'll do a portfolio review here at some point. So if anybody wants their portfolio reviewed, I did put a community post. So go check on our channel, go to the community section, and you can submit your portfolio there. So Brittany, go do that, because I saw your other work too. It's good. Like, it's good.
Good.
So I'm sure your blog looks great. You also did, and I did notice, and Sean mentioned this earlier too, there is a thing in our video that I do need to go back to and address, actually. I'm going to address it in text, but there's kind of a security issue, and this is kind of a general security issue with a lot of apps, right? So I think what Brittany did was, for the email part of the blog, she used the actual real credentials, right? For an email service, using like Gmail or whatever it is, right? And then not realizing that goes out to Git.
Yeah.
So you put those email credentials out on GitHub. Yes, you're putting out your password and your email address out on GitHub. So I do need we do need to remind people about that. If you are doing
I'll put that list and show them how they could hide those types of things. There's a way inside ASP.NET for all of those things to be hidden.
Yeah, so maybe we'll add an additional video to that. It's a very, very good point. For now, I'm going to put a note on the video just to make sure people know that. Like, hey, if you put this out there, somebody could go and view your credentials.
Right.
Yeah. That's great. And thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Let me see here. Let's do the next one.
You can also make your repo private, and that would fix it too, if you want to keep your repo private for now.
Yeah. Yep.
Or you could just use Gmail, make up Gmail account and just use that one. You know, you could do that too.
Just use the one you don't care about.
Yeah, and one you don't care about, and just check the email there. That's something you could do.
We tend to use Mailinator a lot when we're like demoing stuff, or testing it. Because they're just throwaway email addresses. Doesn't really matter. Let's see here. Firesnake says, how you guys learn. Like, I've been trying for 2 whole years, but I can't do anything, can't get a project, can't really understand. And by the way, I exercise a lot, like a lot.
So is he talking about exercise like in working out, like lift weights?
No. I'm guessing like making things. I'm guessing making things.
Okay. I don't know. I would have to sit down and like really kind of analyze what you're doing, and I don't know, to see kind of where your mental block is, and just we could help you overcome that. But in general, take a tutorial, do it, then try to do it from just using your other code as a guide without cut and pasting. Try to retype it in, and then try to build something similar. That's the technique we use. So you have to get from concrete copying something down to how to apply this to a different problem set. So I think that's the key, is to move to abstract from concrete.
Okay. Not a plant, I promise. We get one of these every live stream. But,
the plant. It looks like a plant. Look at Sessa. Looks like a plant. Like you just type something in the screen and made a YouTube bot. So like.
Sorry, but not. This is the real person. I hope.
Yeah, Sessa, hit us up on learn.coderfoundry.com, and we have a self-paced course that you can go to. If you want to learn it from us, there's some other channels out there on YouTube that do it as well, and it's not as many, but it's definitely worth knowing for sure.
Yep. Okay. Isn't in the weeds question.
Okay.
Let me do that. Let's get rid of that. There we go. So that you don't have to use curly brackets for C# anymore. Is that only for the latest version?
I'd have to go look in that. I think in most cases you still want to curly bracket your if-then statements, functions, and those kind of things. So I'd have to look at the use case you're talking about. But I can't imagine, and I could be wrong there. I need to look at C# 10. But even then, I'm probably still going to do it just because I want to know what the scope is of the code that I'm running at. And I don't want the compiler to make a guess to where it's at.
Yeah. And I can't imagine trying to read that without those. That would make it really difficult to
So I don't know. I'd have to look into like what the use case is. So I think they're still used quite a bit. We're still doing it. So there may be something I don't know.
Bye. Okay. Again, just to clarify, not another plank question. Best way to learn C# to make it easier. I would just do this one really quickly. Same thing again.
Yeah, exactly. Kevin keeps going here. So.
But I just wanted to address your question. That was all.
Yeah.
And actually, look at this. Is literally the next one in line. Again, not shill the course again here. C# Holo, not when you're on the self-paced course.
Controllers and views, it makes it easy, man. Awesome. You've seen the ASP.NET, and you've seen what Visual Studio does for you. It's really cool. Hope you've built the address book as well. So
yeah, that's cool. Thanks for being part of the course, Casey. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's see. Someone said, I had an interview yesterday. They asked me about delegates, extension methods, generic, static versus read-only, async task. Advanced concepts much necessary to learn.
I do understand that you're going to get those questions. Here's what I would say to anyone out there that gets these kind of questions. You're like, I don't know what they're talking about. Is I take a notebook into an interview, and then I would write down every single question that you get, and then I would study those questions for the next one. And it just depends on what job you're interviewing for and what they're asking. Whether all of this stuff matters depends on what you're interviewing for, so you may get these kind of concepts. So what we do is put these in my top 30 C# interview questions. I know the answer to them all, and make sure I have, if you're going to be asked about delegates, write an application that uses delegates and show them how that works. Same thing with static versus read-only, that kind of thing. Async, a task, await. It's really hard to write MVC site without using async and tasks.
Go and watch our video from, I think, last week. Did we do it last week?
Yeah.
Thursday last week? I think it was one last week where we talked about this too. So we have a whole video on doing exactly this.
So if you're interviewing for senior level positions, you may get a lot of these questions. If you're in for junior, you may see these questions or not. I mean, so I think that you just write them all down and make sure you know how to do them. And I'm sure you may have done fine with this. But it depends on what you're interviewing for. Is that a medium level, senior level? Is it super junior? But there's some more concepts. Yeah, you need to learn some of these things. But if you build a .NET application in MVC, you're going to use a lot of these things because that's kind of how it works. So, as you go through it, you'll learn a lot about these things. So, all right. Hope that helps.
Okay. Straight pure zone, hopefully. I just finished my first tech internship interview. I wore a suit. Yeah. Some say I overdressed. Opinions on this?
I don't think you did.
No.
I mean, versus going all Zoolander, I don't think you can overdress. I just don't. I think you can. If you wear a business suit, you're going to be good. There's nothing wrong with wearing a coat and tie to an interview. No one's going to look down on you. No one's like, man, he's stuffy. I wonder if he can wear a Black Sabbath t-shirt, like all the other guys. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it just shows that you respect the interviewer, that you decided to dress up. And we know, hey, man, we don't dress up every day. I don't dress up every day. So they know that you had to put in some effort on this. I don't think it's going to hurt you down at all. So I think that's okay.
Yep, definitely not.
I think better than underdressing, man. I can tell you that. Don't wear shorts, a tank top, and flip flops. I mean,
that's the exact thing here, right? It's okay to be the best dressed person in the room. It is not okay to be the worst dressed person in the room.
Right, man.
So
I'm just telling you, you walk in with flip flops and shorts, you better bring the goods. I mean, in other words, they're just going to look down on you. Or you better be interviewing at a surfboard company or something like that. So,
yes. I think the general rule is, if you're going for an interview, if attire isn't mentioned, then formal attire is okay. Business formal attire is okay.
Yeah.
Don't go in a Dickie or whatever, or bow tie.
If you don't want to wear a tie, man, just rock a button down with a jacket is fine too. I mean, you can definitely go tieless, but still wearing slacks, a button down shirt with a coat is a good look. And some brown shoes, not sneakers. So I think that's good. I think you did okay, man. It's not gonna hurt you.
Definitely. I think you're fine with that. It's kind of funny. This reminds me of something from what did I do? I put this on LinkedIn a couple of days ago. Yesterday, but somebody was talking about, and it spurned a kind of a conversation around dress as well as those kind of things. But I put up a message talking about not having a LinkedIn. Right, I'd seen a couple of tweets about somebody being like, LinkedIn was optional, right? To breaking. I'm like, okay, and my point was, LinkedIn is optional as having a resume is optional, as dressing formally for an interview is optional.
Right.
Agreed. All optional. Yes, you don't have to do these things. There's a fringe case of somebody who was just handed $100,000 job just because they walked past this guy on the street. Yes.
Yeah, they met him in a convenience store, and you were buying protein shakes together, and you're like, man, You work out? Yeah, I do. What do you do? I'm a coder. Really? I am too.
There you go. Boom, you got a job. There you go. That happened.
You got a job.
And that's the story you hear about. But that is not how 99.99% of people got their job. No. They had a resume. They have a LinkedIn profile. They showed up to an interview wearing a suit or formal attire.
Exactly.
It's that simple.
LinkedIn, I think, is necessary. I think you're invisible to every recruiter on the face of planet Earth if you're not using LinkedIn, especially in the U.S.
You don't need it.
And Western Europe. You should be on LinkedIn for sure.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Okay. We're coming to the end here. I'm gonna just get into this. I've got to that. What does he say?
Yeah. Don't wear Chippendale uniform.
Oh, yeah.
That's a little too casual.
not a good look. That is not going to work out.
Not a good look.
Unless you're going for that job.
Hey, if you're interviewing for Magic Mike 3, and Channing Tatum's not available, maybe that's what you want to do.
Exactly. Then maybe that's the thing. Here you go. Ben has the most important question. Have you watched Star Wars Visions? I haven't yet.
I have not.
It's in my list.
I have a Discord group that I play games with, and they've been raving about it the last couple of weeks.
Okay.
And I'm not the hugest anime fan, so I haven't really got into it. But I heard that there's a couple of episodes in there that are just like genre changing for Star Wars. Like, that's what I've heard. That's what they told me, that you have to watch this.
Okay.
whether you like anime or not. Like it's just,
Yeah,
it
it's not my
changes.
thing either. So it's like I added it to my queue because it's there, and I have Disney
Yeah.
Plus, so it's like I'm gonna
Yeah.
maybe ultimately watch it. But I also
Yeah.
I haven't even watched the Bad Batch yet, so I know that's like bad of me, but I have a lot of stuff to catch up on. So
British
Baking
Baking just came out, Kevin. So we can watch it on Netflix.
I might have started that actually. I tell you what else. What else? Do you watch Squid Game yet?
I haven't seen it, but I've heard that it's crazy good.
Okay.
So Squid Game's cool.
Yeah. So everyone needs to check out Squid Game on Netflix.
Yeah.
Crazy good. It's really good.
All right. So we've got a couple more here, and we'll go for the road here.
Let's do one more thing here. Just okay. This last one here just came up. Robert says, beginner project ideas, finance major looking to apply some knowledge.
Okay. So here's a beginner project idea, Robert. I would make a budgeting app that tracks budgets and expenses in categories so that you can make a home-based budget. So you track your income and categorize your expenses in categories. So
definitely something you should know about.
Entertainment, food, gas. So I think that's pretty good. I mean, that's without having to know anything about other types of finance type projects. That's a pretty easy one to get to.
What's that one? There was one really good budget app, Mint, right? So go look at, I think, Intuit bought that, right? So go look at their thing. Oh, look, I have a, hold on. Let me pull this up here. I've been working on a little Stinger thing. Look, I haven't used it yet, but look.
Okay.
This is early days. I haven't used this yet. So this is the alpha version of a Stinger. So hold on.
Okay.
So here you go. A little transition, look.
Oh wow! Look at that.
So there you go. So get these little.
Cool.
I'm working on it. We're doing some extra little whiz bangy things. But yeah, so look at if you want to do something like that, just look at what features this has. Right?
Yeah, don't do them all. Just do the basic ones.
Yeah,
and
you
then
get some really good ideas from this. Use the app and be like, oh, that's cool. I could see that. This has.
Well, also, you're not gonna be able to do credit monitoring. Just
there's some things you can't tie into. Yeah, but the budget planner.
Budget planner. You can do that budget planner for sure.
Yep. So go look at what this thing has.
Sure.
Yeah, there's some good features in here that you could definitely leverage.
Cool.
So, we try my Stinger again. Look, boom, there you go.
Wow, you're fancy, man.